You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and this is my conversation with yet another excellent musician from the town of Perth in Western Australia. His name, Alex Arpino. The reason for the conversation is to promote Alex's brand new in-studio offering for 2018. It's a self-titled affair. So let's hear what Alex has to say about that and all of the other things he has to share about his wonderful music. Let's go. All right, so mate, welcome to the show, Alex. You formerly are the frontman of the Autumn Isles, and you're just on the cusp of releasing your brilliant self-titled album. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, we finished up with the Autumn Isles in 2015, and I really just kind of went back to the drawing board and to consider what I wanted to do. I obviously had, as a songwriter, it's always something that's there. So I just really got into the studio without any expectation and just started to put some demos together and just really chipped away at it for quite a couple of years, and then just felt it was the right time to actually put it together and put it out as a solo record. What's been enjoyable is obviously there's no real expectation, and I got to work with a couple of friends that, in particular Malcolm Clark of the Sleepy Jacks, and he came in and played drums on all the songs. Mm-hmm. But we've known each other for quite a while, so it was a perfect kind of project to get together and work on some stuff. But it's really just a collection of influences that have just inspired me over the years, and it's probably a little bit more personal lyrically, because obviously it's just myself, video, and but there's a lot of upbeat moments, some more delicate moments, and I just really went for an eclectic kind of mix of songs.
Yeah, I definitely hear that, and I read online that you're a fan of a lot of the work that was released on the Sub Pop label and some of the Geffen stuff from the 90s, and I think that's very apparent on the track No One Has to Know, which is one of my favourite cuts on the album. So can you talk a little bit about, I'm just picking one of the various influences that have made it onto the album, but can we talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, so I was, as a young fella, I probably started out more going through it like a hip hop kind of phase, and I was into like graffiti art and, did the whole breakdancing thing and all the rest of it. And it was around, for me, it was the Sub Pop, Nirvana, Bleach, obviously, and then going on to Geffen with Nevermind. But that, I really did catch that whole Seattle bug, and then that kind of moved into Sonic Youth and some of the more experimental bands. But No One Has to Know, that was, I just really enjoy plugging in a distortion pedal and finding a nice riff, really. And that was the culmination of all of that. And I wanted to have something that I suppose, represented that period of time for me as well. So that was that song, really. It's got a nice bite to it and driving beat. And Mel Clark on drums on that track, I think it just works really, really well.
Okay, yeah, sweet. Yeah, it's a classy way to represent that era, that's for sure. I mean, I'm a massive fan of that era, the early 90s, because I'm 40 years of age, so that was my introduction to music. Sonic Youth, Archers of Loaf, Weezer, Nirvana, and that cut there is it's a wonderful reference to it, but it's not indicative of the sound of the album. And what I mean by that is probably my favourite cut is Space Ghost in a Puppet. Now, that floored me, to be frank, mate. So can you tell me about that track?
Yeah, that was actually the last song I put together for this album, and it was actually built off of a drum groove from an outtake that I had, and I just started to piece. I really liked the drum beat and just plugged in a synth and started to work with that. So it came together quite quickly, and lyrically it was a little bit kind of tongue in cheek, and I didn't really know whether it would get on the final list. But the more I listened to it, I equally really enjoy it, and I thought it would be a great introduction in the end for the album as the first single. But
is that right? I didn't know that. So yeah, I mean, it just, the song just jumped out at me, not realizing, of course, that it was a single, mate. But that's a great selection.
Yeah. So that was the opening single. So it was, and it was quite different for me because usually built songs around guitar riffs and started, acoustically and kind of laid songs from that point, whereas this, it came the other way, more of a groove-based track. And, I was just really proud of it. It was quite different, and I think it just worked.
So you mentioned the fella from the Sleepy Jacksons earlier. Can you talk about the musicians that helped you craft this? Did they have any say in the artistic direction, or was it just a case of you knowing exactly what you wanted to have on the album and you just drafted in great musicians to realise that vision?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really started with finding the right drummer. So Mel Clark came in for that, and then I pretty much played everything else myself. Bar, I got some friends in to play some brass. So Peter Youngkin, he plays in a great band here in Perth, the Community Chest. So he played some trombone and trumpet, and then Dylan Hooper, a friend of mine, he plays in a band called Boom Bat Pow. He's a great saxophone player. So he came in and did some sax on a track as well. And then beyond that, it was Amy Rosado. She's a great vocalist, played in a really cool cover band in Perth called Stratus Funk, and they've recently just finished up.
Stratus Funk, so that's an awesome name.
Yeah. So she was interested. Yeah, I just reached out to her, so she came in and did some great backing vocals across a few of the tracks. And then Kirsten Fage, who I worked with on the last Autumn Isles record, she's plays cello. Managed to get her on a couple of tracks as well before she took off to Canada, I think it was, to further her studies. But and that was about it, really. And everything else I just laid myself in the studio, which was really fun. In particular, playing bass, I think it's something that...
Is that right?
I think... Yeah, initially I was, early on, I probably didn't give bass as much respect as it actually deserves, but it's just such an integral part to music, and just being able to sit in the studio and piece together bass lines and stuff, it's just really fun. So that was a highlight as well.
Well, as regular listeners will know, I'm a bass player, mate, so that's music to my ears. And...
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Probably the right guy to have that discussion with then.
Well, look, let's talk about this for a bit, because I speak to a lot of musicians, mate. I've spoken to hundreds at this point in time, and the bass is an instrument that gets pushed to the background more often than not, but it's an essential component when you really know what you're doing, like someone like yourself does. So talk to us about how you were able to... Actually, talk to us about your journey from not really considering the bass as an integral part to considering an integral part. I'm really curious on this one.
Well, it took me a while to understand that you don't approach a bass guitar like you do a six-string guitar. That was probably the first thing. And I think that the relationship with the drums was something that I had to really take some time and just be a little bit smarter around the placement of the notes and things like that. And I'm not in any way saying that I'm proud of what I achieved on the record, but as you know, it's an instrument that takes a very long time to kind of master, in particular when you're writing parts and things like that. But yeah, I think when a bass line comes together, it really provides so much energy and drive, and the heaviness as well. Like, we mentioned that track "No One Has to Know." Majority the heaviness for me came from the bass in that riff. Whereas I would have normally
agreed. I know what you're saying. It's like people don't necessarily understand the role that Chris Novoselic played in Nirvana's sound, which is crucial to that band.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the success of the sound, really.
Yeah, 100%. And and as a three-piece as well, like, it's just amazing. So it was really that. So I took, I invested in a decent bass, and took a bit more time trying to understand, and in the production as well, getting a good DI and did a bit more reading around the placement in the mix and things like that. So, but no, it was great.
So what sort of bass did you end up recording the tracks on the album with?
So it was a Fender Jazz bass.
Good choice. Great choice.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research. It's not a US one, unfortunately, but it's a Mexican. But look, it's a beautiful bass, and I put flat wounds on it.
Bit of roto sound action. Yep.
Yeah, and then I've got an older. It's not as good quality, but it's an old PV bass which I got years ago for something, and it's just kind of sat in my studio. But I just put some standard strings on that one, and I found the variation between the two really covered me across the album. So yeah. And then I also spent a bit of time with some synth bass lines as well on the record, which is really different. I've never done that before on any previous recordings. So actually, the bass line on Space Ghost in a Puppet is a synth.
There you go. No, but I've been listening to it through the car speakers, through the Bluetooth thing. So when that cut came on, I was like, yeah, how to write a bloody song if you can write that, there's no doubt. But I haven't really deep dived into it and been able to separate the instrumentation. But I'll tell you this story quickly. I had a chat to a fellow called Ron Francois, who's one of the finest bass players that ever existed in my view. He's a Brit-born, I'm going to call him an honorary Australian these days. He's been here for about 30, 40 years or thereabouts, but he was a bass player in a band called Eurogliders. You've probably heard of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, phenomenal. I had about 2-hour conversation with him about the role of the bass guitar and about when you're playing music that is bass-centric, how that relates to people. And the truth is, mate, I've played, because I'm a Queenslander, I've played in rural locations in Queensland. Again, long-time listeners will know I've told this story before, but I've had people to yell at me to stop playing slap bass because they don't understand it, because I play funk-style bass, very heavily influenced by guys like Bernard Edwards. Larry Graham, got a big block-mounted poster of him in my little office here that I'm staring at. I try to inject that sort of funk into the music that I play, but people just don't get it. I find it's very hard to relate to rock and roll audiences, as they are, no doubt, as they are in Western Australia, as they are here in Queensland. And as soon as we play, as a covers artist, as soon as we play stuff that I don't care much for, to be quite frank, with all due respect to the artists, such as Steve Earle's Copperhead Road, or just any AC/DC stuff, no disrespect to the artist at all, but as a bassist, there's nothing doing. But that's what people want to hear. So, but I really like your story about how you found time for the bass, because I obviously, I'm a rarity in that the bass is the first instrument, actually the clarinet is the first instrument that I started with. But I ended up on the bass, and that's my career instrument, but I also played guitar as a result of playing the bass. So I'm not one of those guys who played the guitar and moved across to the bass. It's the opposite. And I hear everything as a bass player still.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. So, I think it's certainly, in terms of my ears, looking out for the bass line when I'm listening to music, it's opened that up for me a lot more. So, I look forward to doing more of it in the studio.
Something else I really liked about your album is the attention to detail. Now, I'll refer to the album cover art there because I'm a big fan of really good cover art. I know we live in an era where people consume music over devices, so they rarely glance at the energy and the effort that an artist has put into it. But I read online that you do large-scale urban art and murals, so I can only assume that you've also done the cover art for your album here. So if that's the case, tell us all about it.
Yeah, so I decided with this album I really wanted to put it out on vinyl, and obviously that gives a larger canvas to work on. So I really thought it would be good to get some, really take some time to get some beautiful illustrations. And I'd recently got a iPad Pro, and I'd been experimenting with digital painting and doing all of that. So I thought that this would be a great project to kind of jump into that. So it was all done on my iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil and just digitally painted. So it probably took me, I worked on it over a period of about 3 weeks on and off. So there's a lot of illustration inside because it's a full gatefold vinyl that I've gone for. So there's some artwork inside, and also put together with a friend of mine, Dan Durack, a lyric sheet that pulls out and everything. So I've gone.
Well done on that. Yeah.
I've really dived into it because I agree with you. I think, you know, the streaming age, that's one of the things that's really that we're missing out on, is all the beautiful artwork that was just quite common across, you know, the vinyl period. And so it's something that I'm really passionate about. And yeah.
Well, look, I straddle. I see a lot of positives about this day and age we live in with streaming, YouTube, the whole thing. I embrace it. I see a lot that allows an artist to get the big positive to it is that it allows an artist such as yourself to get your music out to as broad a possible people as what you possibly can without relying on a distribution network in the traditional sense. I think Firestarter do a wonderful job, by the way. Hence, you and I can have a conversation about this stuff. It's more so that's the positive to it. The negative to it is that people aren't paying enough attention to music, in my view. Okay, now when an artist like yourself, I'm looking at your cover art here now, so if I can describe it to the listener, in the top left-hand corner you've got a cosmos, and the top right you've got the moon. There's yourself with some aqua blue and some green hues in the middle of it. You're represented here 3 times. So I'll ask you about that actually before I continue. Is there a reason why you've been represented 3 times? As in your profile of your face has been represented 3 times in the art?
Yeah, look, I think for me, it was about kind of representing different shades of, I suppose, the writing really on the record, because it is a bit of an eclectic mix of songs. I think, I tried to represent that in the different tones of the faces. So I think the one on the left has got the sunglasses,
Spot on.
The sun stuff. It's a bit more of a pop thing. And then I suppose I would put the central one as, it's quite a stark, direct kind of expression. I think that's maybe represents the honesty that's gone into it lyrically. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the one on the right probably more reflects to my past, and maybe the heavier kind of material on there as well. So I think that's a general thing. I tend to approach things fairly intuitively. For that, I had more of a, I suppose, just more of a design perspective of wanting to get the different kind of vibe in the album cover. So, I'm really happy with the piece.
Oh, it's beautiful. And the other thing too, from the listener's perspective, is that, or for people listening, is that you've got your hand in there with a pencil writing. So pencil's obviously a very deliberate choice. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I like the idea of it, being a kind of a moment in terms of, journal writing, things like that. And as I said, lyrically, I've really taken the time to, I think in the past I've probably relied on more kind of metaphor or vague approaches lyrically, whereas there is a bit more of a literal sense on this record. So I just thought it would be interesting to capture that visually, that it's like a personal moment writing. And in terms of a pencil, it just, I don't know, I think they just look cooler from a design perspective, just getting the different angles on the pencil and stuff like that.
Tell us about, talking about the lyrical themes, tell us about the second cut, I Remember You Dancing with the Devil.
Yes. So that's I think, well, it's really about essentially about temptation and getting drawn into something that's obviously not going to lead anyone to anything positive. I thought it would be fun to do. It's got a bit of an 80s pop vibe, that song, and I think that particular era, there was a lot, there would always be some heartbreak in the lyric. I think that comes with the territory. So for me, that one, not so much a literal thing, but, certainly there's been times in my life where maybe I've been, had my heart broken on in terms of getting led astray or haven't acted on an opportunity, just common stuff that everyone kind of faces from time to time.
But, I think that point you just made, they haven't acted on an opportunity. We've all been there as human beings, right, where we're driving home or what have you, and we're going, I didn't read the signs, or we find out through a mate that somebody was interested. I'm happily married. I need to say that, so I'm not thinking that way now, but I'm talking about in the past.
Exactly.
And you think...
And that's it.
Yeah.
It's about that, and it's flirting with that temptation, and it's about, obviously with that somewhat of a battle in terms of that willpower and things like that. And I thought it would just be fun to summarise that as a pop song that has those kind of 80s references in there as well.
Cool. Now I need to ask this question, as I ask every artist from Perth this, because I'm curious for each and every response. Perth, in my view, is the hotbed of Australian music in 2017 and 2018. So what's your take on what is contributing to Perth producing such wonderful artists, such as yourself, right the way across the board? It's not just with pop and rock themed artists. You've got guys like Reams over there and doing the hip-hop thing, Rat King doing the grind thing. There are so many bands producing so much wonderful music. What's your perspective on the Perth scene?
It's a tough one, because I can only really go by my own personal journey and experience in that. And I think being quite a small, tight-knit community, it does generate a healthy competitive edge. I think that might have something, because I know for me, working with peers and, if they've released something that's really inspiring, you just you're inspired to kind of better it, match it. You want to kind of contribute to, to that scene. So that's something that's driven me along. As far as why and how, it's a very interesting one. I don't know, because people have spoken about the isolation, that maybe the isolation has something to do with it, that we have to kind of rely on ourselves to create.
Do you feel isolated in Perth? I mean, these days we're such an interconnected global community. You could be in the far reaches of Alaska, for example, and still feel like as though you're part of a community. But do you genuinely feel that way, or is that just the legacy of Perth being the most isolated capital city in the globe?
I think from a music perspective, in terms of engaging a national music industry, I think there is somewhat of a sense of isolation, because it just, for bands to get over east and play, it's such a mission to get together the funds and organise it all. It's quite challenging. So I think on that level, and I think that, obviously national radio and all of that, it's all based over there. It's not, you need to really get over there and engage over east. So I think on that level, you do feel somewhat isolated. But I think as well, as you were saying, that we live in a different age, and that's becoming less and less. And you mentioned the streaming thing as well. Everything's so accessible online, and communication's a lot easier. So I think that's changing slowly. But yeah, I do think that the isolation thing probably has some merit to it, for sure.
Cool, mate. All right, look, I'll wind things up. How do people get in touch with you? So obviously you'll have Facebook, but how else can they communicate with you and listen to your wonderful music once it's released at the end of this week?
So the record will be on SoundCloud as well. So it'll be across all major streaming platforms. SoundCloud, Bandcamp. The vinyl is I'm still awaiting its delivery from the UK. So that's probably a few weeks away. But how
many? Just on that point, how many copies have you got being delivered? Because as I say, I mean, I'll buy one, mate. From the album cover art to the music that you've got on it, it's one of those essential items that I feel has been released in 2018. So have you got a limited number released? Or?
So this run is 250 for a first run.
So get in there quick, I think.
just get in touch via Bandcamp. It's also available through CD Baby. Can be ordered through that, and I'll obviously for Perth it'll go locally to some of the stores. No plans at this stage to get it to stores over east, so it'll probably be mainly online. Beyond that, all the usual stuff: Twitter, Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel. I've really been spending quite some time putting together videos. I would encourage you to go to my YouTube channel and check out some. Put together a pretty fun video for I Remember You Dancing with the Devil.
What's the feedback been like on the platform there? Because there's always, in my view with YouTube, there's always a lot of nasty comments on that one there. The trolling thing. So you've avoided that, or have you found that people have sort of gone on there and just used it as an opportunity to vent?
Well, look, because it's early days, I don't have, a massive following or anything on YouTube. Majority of the engagement for me has been on Facebook and Instagram. But so really for me at the moment, YouTube's just a place to put the videos up so people can see them in a high definition and all the rest of it. But so far it's been really, really positive. And I'm planning to make some more videos for this album because I think it's just an interesting medium to explore. And I've been lucky enough to meet up with a local video producer by the name of Jaeger. He's got a company, Wise Productions, and he's been really positive, and so he's really helped put together some pretty fun videos for, and Space Ghost in a Puppet we did a video for as well. So
we could
check that out.
Hey, look, just the final point, I only make this because it's something that I think a lot of artists struggle with, but I notice your Facebook following is at about 110 or thereabouts. How do you feel you legitimately increase that following? Because you're playing a type of music that's very accessible and can be played in a variety of applications and situations. So myself, for example, who has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, I can play your music very comfortably around them. And I think a lot of people like me that are musical appreciators, mate. So how do you cut through and get your name heard across all these social media platforms? Of course, Facebook's the big one, though.
Well, look, it's early days. Like that particular page I set up in, it was the end of March when Space Ghost in a Puppet came out. So that was the very first kind of jump into it. I've been mindful not to do the whole pay, to...
Yeah, the spam thing, where you just like me.
Yeah, exactly. I've promoted a couple of videos because I think just to get it out. But as far as pushing the page to get, I'm really trying to build like a genuine fan base from the ground up. So all of the people that are
I understand what you said then completely. Yeah, that's what I've tried to do as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm personally, I'm not too anxious about it. I'm just wanting things to kind of build organically, and I think that's, because I want people to genuinely be interested and want to engage, and if that means that that's 100 to 200 to 1,000 or whatever, then that's fine with me. I'm not too bothered about that. There was a time in my life where I would be stressing out about all of that, particularly in my last band, but I don't think that that's very helpful at all.
No, agreed.
It's a distraction. I think the focus needs to be on just the quality output, the strength of the material. Yeah.
100% agreed. And you've got nothing to worry about, nothing to be anxious about with the quality of your music here. What people are trying to do these days, sorry, I know I said we'd wind it up, but I need to make this point for the listener, is that a lot of people are putting the cart before the horse, and that they're getting this wonderful online presence, but the music, to be honest with you, isn't really there. You've got the music. You've got the music that can cut through, and God, I'll make another point here within this point that I'm making now, but I think your music could be wonderful for the Asian market. My wife's half Filipino. We spend a lot of time in the Philippines. Your music, I could imagine being played in the clubs over there very easily. Very easily. And it's just plant the seed for you on that one there, because I think Aussie artists, mate, we're missing a wonderful opportunity within Asia, which is on our doorstep. Indonesia as a country, big music fans. Their president has been photographed wearing Napalm Death T-shirts before he was president. You know, I mean, this is what's available to us, right? It's right here,
Yeah.
you know, Malaysia. I mean, it's Thailand. I mean, we a lot of Aussies, especially being from Perth, have been to Bali. It's probably cheaper to go to Bali
Yeah.
than it is to go to Sydney, you know.
Yeah.
It's all on our doorstep, mate. I think it just needs a few enterprising individuals to take those first steps. And I know people are trying to do it, but yeah, just to break that market and get those established contacts and just make it happen. And with your music, mate, and your management team, I'd really encourage you to look in that direction because I think it'd bear fruit.
Yeah, wow. Thanks for the tip. I'll certainly look into that.
Yeah. All right, mate. It's been a wonderful chat. Congratulations on the album. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and that was my conversation with the musician Alex Arpino. I really appreciate you listening.